Everyone, today we talk with Toad, the guy running the ship over at Task Force Admiral. After years of anticipation, their demo has come out, and their Kickstarter has smashed their initial goals. The game has been the talk of the town, and we sit down to get a first reaction of the demo's release. This interview is a bit different from the usual ones. Instead of focusing on development, we instead speak about what it is like to approach a project with pure passion and less institutional experience in game development. So sit back and relax to hear Toad's point of view, because he definitely has one. If this is your first time here, this channel focuses on multiplayer sim gameplay, so if you're into that, please subscribe. All right, so Toad, welcome to the channel.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Really, always wanted to talk to you actually on microphone and or on a recording, I should say. And I think this is a really exciting week because this is the week where your demo finally went live, and I would probably just guess it's been very hectic for you.
It was indeed. It was short nights, but very happy days. I mean, it's a big relief. Really a big relief.
How do you think the reaction's been to Task Force Admiral so far? Like, I don't know if you want to get into like kind of what you were expecting and what the reaction has been, but what's kind of like now that you've had, I don't know how it's been, like what, 2 days now? Like now that you had some time to think about it, like where's your head at?
Well, I made a habit of being pessimistic usually because when you're pessimistic regarding something, I mean, as long as it doesn't impact your motivation, at least it curbs your enthusiasm. It will make your expectations a bit closer to reality, and that's probably the first time when it comes to internet and software thing that I've been carefully, I mean, like pessimistic or carefully optimistic, and I mean, it's been huge. It's been fantastic. I mean, because there's that problem when you've been developing something for many years. You end up not really knowing if you're going in the right direction. I mean, especially when you are a small team like that. It's not like we're not ED. We're not a big team. We do not have like 30, 40 people working on that, and having a lot of other people out there giving us feedback. We, especially in the beginning when we couldn't have other people play the thing, we were unable to assess the whole, how would I say, the interest, but also the worth of what we were doing, and if the calls we made were right calls to begin with. And there is something that I mean, you've heard about him probably. I mean, Niels from the Sea Power team. I mean, Triassic Games. One day, because he has much more experience than I do. I mean, he used to be in the industry early on. I'm actually I actually don't come from the game industry at all. So, but he told me, I mean, okay, you can make sure that you put the right names in there, that the ships are made right, that the airplanes look cool and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you're gonna ask yourself if it's fun, which, I mean, it's obviously important when you're making a game. And I know out there are gonna be at least two schools of thought regarding a game being fun or not. I mean, I've had that over the last few days on the Steam forums. People saying that you had a few people saying that there's no game in the game. See, I mean, like you're just giving orders from time to time. A lot of the stuff is all about watching things unravel. Actually, you saw a couple of people told me that they felt a bit powerless because, I mean, you cannot steer the game in fact, you can only steer the game in a certain direction, but it's nothing like the kind of paradigm right now where a game wants to give you the feeling that you're in an open world and that everything bows to your authority. I mean, what we exactly wanted to do was just that. I mean, if you read that, I mean, just the opposite of the world bowing to you. I mean, this is what we get from reading the archives or reading books like Black Shoe Carrier Admiral by John Lundstrom. I mean, it's what we in Greek they call a tragedy. That is, you might be the hero, but fate is not in your hands. And I mean, I find that exciting because I'm a weird person. And the question was that do we have more weird persons like that out there who might enjoy that kind of tension, knowing that you can do some little things to affect the fates. But for instance, if you took the wrong decision 2 hours ago in game, are you going to have some fun still when the Japanese dive bombers will be above your carrier and you have to rely on RNG? And to be honest, I was a little bit more optimistic after Sea Power because Sea Power is very much, I mean, that kind of experience, except it's missiles and it's jets. So I mean, it's that kind of stuff going at you, coming at you at Mach 3. But it's the same principle. I mean, at some point, the missiles are on their way, just like the enemy strike is on its way. You have cap fighters, just like they have Sea Power has interceptors. I mean, missiles, and then it's not you who is in any position or ability to actually bring that missile or bring that fighter upon the enemy. And I must be, and we were really like overwhelmed with joy, overwhelmed with surprise, because there's actually a lot of weird people like us out there. It's not just about the nostalgia of the 90s and all that. There are people who are digging our design choices, and these design choices, I think, were a little bit. I mean, were a little bit dangerous, and we're happy to see that the risks we took did pay off in the end.
Okay. So a lot to unpack there. Let's take a step back. Let me go through. You said a lot of interesting things. Okay, so let me try to. I was like trying to write as quickly as you were talking, but let me let's pull on a few of these threads. Okay. So one, pessimistic or just French. So, how? I mean, I guess I used to live in France, so I understand that the French can be quite pessimistic sometimes. But I'm curious. Let's maybe get very tight and concrete or specific. But I would imagine it's really interesting to sit there and design something and then build it, and then you finally give it to the players and they play it, and then I'm sure you're dying to see the reaction. So I'm kind of interested to hear, like, what are some things that you were not sure people would like in the demo, but then you actually got like a lot of good feedback on it.
Well, I would say I would begin to say would start by saying that I think that kind of fear or pessimism or even self-loathing. I mean, it depends on the days. It depends on the mood. Depends on what is happening outside of the game. I mean, I live it differently probably than my developer, for instance, because I'm just the guy paying the bills and making the game design. But I would say, I mean, this whole thing, it started as in French we call it a caprice. I don't know how you call it in English. It's uh, it's not that I made it for fun. Of course, I made it for fun, but caprice, how do you call it in English? Like Google is gonna tell me. Okay, well, it's more of a whim. It's more of a fancy. I mean, no, yeah. I mean, it's more of a whim. Yeah, what Google tells me. It's like it wasn't. Tell me. Yeah.
So I sorry to cut you off. Along this thought with the whim, to me, I guess that is a direct translation. But let me before you run with this, because I want to hear it. Yeah. One thing I want to add really quickly is, in my opinion, when I look at the game, and the game, and also all the illustrations that you guys are making, and the plans that you have, and we'll get into that. To me, it almost seems like a love letter to like the World War II Pacific theater, and like carriers. So that's what I was thinking of. But let's hear what you think in terms of a couple of these.
But it's just, I mean, there's something about the French, obviously, if you have some sort of experience with us, is that, I mean, I can see that in many games we make, and that's the reason why, even though we can't come up with a damn working AI model, we're still, we do exist on the gaming scene, for instance. I mean, there's no reason why France should be that I wouldn't say prominent, I'd say or important. I mean, I mean, we exist on the gameplay scene just like we exist on the art scene. Or you can go to every time you look at you watch a Hollywood movie, you're gonna go to the FX credits and then you're gonna see a lot of French names out there. I mean, we that kind of stuff we do it with passion because it's to some extent everything is a love story or a love letter. I mean, okay, there is no lady involved in this case, and I mean, I don't want to sound to sound weird, but let's say that I'm pretty sure there are really not a lot of ladies involved in that in our community to begin with, in our own hobby. But the point is that I mean, it's the passion is not linked to the fact that you'll be writing it necessarily for a woman. I mean, you can simply do it because of an idea. I mean, it's not too far away from being idealists. I mean, it's romanticism. Romanticism is not just about talking to the woman or the man you love. I mean, it's about making decisions, bold decisions, and this because you think that you have the feeling that it's the right thing you need is the right thing you want, and this is what happened with that game. Uh, the whole point was that I felt like I needed that game, and question was, do other people needed that game? We couldn't say back then, but what I knew is that I wanted to do that on my bucket list. I mean, you can see it that way. I mean, a lot of people they're gonna wait until they retire to start doing their bucket list. I would say that by French standards, and probably that's why so many people end up divorcing or something. But point is that we have that urge of crossing names on our bucket list early on, because the our idea of retirement, at least my idea and that of some other people I know of, is that once you retire, you do nothing and you rest. But when you are still in age of doing something, then you'd better do something, otherwise you're gonna have regrets all your life. And I felt like that it was the right moment in my life. I mean, I had some little money aside. I sold the apartment I had so that I could get the rest of the funds of the funding, and I went to my old website. I mean, you might have heard of it. It's Check Six over there, and I mean, I started to look for talent, scouted talent. I did something I do in real life. I did some sourcing in the way that I looked for people that I needed for that job, and I went over there. I met them, and we talked about doing it. And I mean, they accepted to go on this ride, on this journey, by standards that would be, I think, unthinkable in some other places. I mean, I can imagine Italians being like that too, but I mean, I wouldn't imagine being at ease in America. Going over there, writing to the guy and meeting them, and I mean, it's another kind of patient in America, and that might be related to business to some extent. But just to give you an idea, my developer, I mean, it's been 5 years we've been working together. He pretty much has dedicated his whole life to the dream of another man, and it's not like people working at SpaceX dedicating themselves to Elon Musk's dream of going to Mars or something. I mean, it's just it's much more micro than that. It's a little thing, and he's excited. He seems to be excited about what he does. I mean, JB, our developer. I mean, I think that when you play his game, you can have the scent of his patient in his code. I mean, not every code out there when you're a programmer smells like it has an identity or that it has a purpose, but his coding, his dedication does. And that's the part about being French. But obviously, when we reach a given point, and there, as you say, I mean, maybe there's the French aspect of doubting ourselves before we jump this week. And in my case, I just don't have this pressure because I don't have this feeling of being an imposter because I know I'm an imposter. I mean, I'm not really at all from the game industry, so I knew that either it would prove that I really knew nothing about that kind of stuff, or it would be a surprising good turn off event. I mean, obviously, for something like for somebody like my developer who has been a professional game developer like for years, it's another kind of stress, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Hmm.
Okay, you want my answers to be maybe shorter. I mean, I can do that.
No. No, it's not that. It's actually not that at all. I don't really. It's funny in these interviews. I always find it funny because how do I say this the right way? Well, okay, now I'm gonna riff for a little bit, but I am a really big fan of radio. I grew up in a car, going to school and doing stuff and listening to talk show radios, like Howard Stern. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but I used to listen to him a lot when I was a kid. But it's really interesting because when you compare radio and you listen to people talk, the interviews on radio are like much longer. Like an hour plus is pretty normal. And that is completely different from when you compare it to like television, especially like late night, where they interview someone for like, I don't know, 5 minutes or 6 minutes after, in between commercials and whatever. And they're just like rushing to the end. So I am much more of the thought that like the longer formats are much better, and I actually really try not to. I try to say as little as possible most of the time. So yeah, so your answers, you go where you want to go. You definitely have a lot to say, which is good, and to bring it back to the game, I think what I'm really hearing, and it's interesting for me because I don't want to say I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm a little surprised how this is going so far, but I'm actually, uh, I'm somewhat not surprised because you definitely are a very passionate person, and the game shows that, and just the way you're talking about it shows that also. Let me um let me give you a reaction so far of what I think about the game, and then maybe you can kind of paint the picture of what I'm missing because what I see. Yeah, what I see may be different, or what I see is I can only comment on what I can see, right? But you're kind of painting a picture, and it's not completely done yet. So I'm kind of curious to see what part's not done yet. But to me, the game feels like the game being Task Force Admiral, of course, is a love letter to the Pacific with the focus on carriers, and it's an area that obviously in history is really important, but it hasn't really been, I don't know, covered really all that much in gaming, especially because World War II has been covered quite a bit, but it's always Europe and it's very little in the Pacific. And it's interesting for me because you're not even American, you're French, and in playing your game, my immediate reaction was it brought me back to Combat Flight Simulator 2 because I remember in that game had like the comics like built into it, and they had like a I wouldn't say it had like the best story, but they were trying to like weave a little bit of a vibe or a feeling. And like if people go back and look at the Combat Flight Simulator 2 trailer, you don't see any graphics. It's just a comic book that's just animated slightly, and you really get a feel for it. And I kind of get the same vibe with your game because the it really seems like it's trying to curate an experience of what 1942 was like for the U.S. Navy slash carriers in the Pacific, and I think it definitely gives that feeling. And you're calling the game Volume or Task Force Admiral Volume One, so a question that naturally comes up is like, what is Volume Two going to look like? Or like, what's the whole picture going to look like? Like, does this series have 3 volumes or 4 volumes or whatever? But that's kind of what my thoughts are so far on the game and kind of the how you're laying things out.
Well, I mean, that's a lot to answer. It's a lot of stuff to answer to. Um, so maybe we start from the end. The volume one thing. I mean, how to say? I mean, when I started, I felt like that. I mean, obviously, especially in the age of certain games that take forever, and ours took kind of forever. But I mean, considering the resources we had, I mean, it's you have the choice between having one guy doing the job of 5 guys over 5 years, or 5 guys doing it in 1 year. I mean, in our case, so that we never had, we could make sure that we would never have any financial problem. We decided to go the long way, and it's called Volume One because one way or another we had to limit the scope. That's why the Japanese side is not playable. That's why we're going for carriers first and then surface combat. But that's why there's no multiplayer. That's why until we get to the next stretch goal on Kickstarter right now, there's not going to be a campaign. And even though there's going to be a campaign, it's a very specific way of making a campaign that is close to the system that is in regiments. I mean, I don't know if you played regiments, but I mean, it's something that is realistic in my mind. It's and it's also, I mean, everything in the stretch goals on the Kickstarter right now. I don't know if it's obvious, but they feel like add-ons. I mean, they are not things that need to be there for the game to exist. I mean, the core gameplay, this is what you have in the demo already. But let's say that if the core gameplay are your living spaces in a house, then all the stuff we're going to add to it, it's going to be like a garage, a shed, a tree, and this stuff. I mean, eventually it will come, but we can release the game without them and add them afterwards, and we wouldn't like impact negatively the original experience. And all that was thought with maybe it's the influence of the Pacific in that regard, but with conservation of resources in mind. And that's why we're going for Volume One, even though right now I cannot tell you 100% sure a Volume Two is going to be a giant ass DLC, or it's going to be its own game. Ideally, I would like volumes to be, evolutions of the engine, radical evolutions of the engine. And that was also a nod to the way things were done in the past. I mean, Cars Out of War had 2 volumes. That's an old SSI game from the early 90s. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but apparently you were very impressed with CFS2. So usually that means you might be a little bit younger than I am. And there was also, I mean, Great Naval Battles. I don't know if it's really in your gaming legacy, but Great Naval Battles, they went all the way to 5 volumes. I mean, this kind of thing in the 90s, it was like it was normal, and the new volume, it would come the year after the first the previous volume, and every time they would change a theater, they would add some new functionalities. They would tweak the system, and they would add a whole new topic. And we wanted to work like that too, because to some extent we were so very close to. And why does it feel like we're trying to connect with the history there? It's also because, I mean, we are looking for legitimacy to some extent, and this legitimacy is coming from our research. When you were in the 90s for games like Task Force 1942 or 1942, the Pacific Air War, I kid you not, you go to the end of the manual and you get a bibliography. I mean, when I was young, I just didn't pay attention to that. But now that I'm older and I've been to college and all that, you can see that they left you. I mean, all this they told you where they went for the information and they took it over there. And this is what we are doing because obviously we're as you said, we're not Americans. It's not in our blood, but it's in our hearts. I mean, I know in America you get 1976 Midway showing every Christmas or stuff like that, but actually it's the same in France. I mean, you get Torah, you get Midway 1976, you get all that stuff every year. And when you get a Baba Black Ship, you watch it on TV where it has terrible French voices, but I mean, it lit that fire that 20, 30 years later brings us to that kind of products. And just, I mean, and after that, I promise you, I let you talk. But it was, you said that we were French, that, yeah, it's kind of true that it might sound weird, but actually it's the normal, into 2025, it's the standard. I mean, and we are not all French. I mean, actually, our to the artists in Indonesian. But I mean, look at how many Americans the Sea Power team has. I mean, it was made by a Swede, a German, and a Pole. I mean, and before that, it all started in the early 2000s. I mean, Flashpoint is made by Czech. Eel 2 was made by Russians. The flanker team is Russian. I mean, at some point, it's not. It might be there are two aspects to that. It's a manifestation of the power of American soft power. I mean, it's just like people. I mean, some people like Mickey. We like the PTO. I mean, uh, for some second of all, it's more worrying, for the state of, in my opinion, the state of what they think stand for when it comes to our American counterparts. Because apart from Jason, for instance, who is very much into that, I mean, I don't see a lot of games like that coming from your actual side of the Atlantic, and that's. I'm not saying it's disturbing. I mean, to each his own. I'm just saying that the weird thing is not that we make these games. The weird thing is that we have to make these games because you're not making them, guys.
Yeah, I actually have had this thought a lot. I don't want to go too deep into it, but one thing I will say is, how do I want to say this the right way? Let me say it this way. Okay, I'll say it. I'll say this. To me, the most from a sim perspective, especially a flight simmer, the best time zone to be in is Western Europe by far, because I have lived in Europe and the US and all over, and on different coasts in the US, and the best time zone has always been, for my opinion, as a sim player, in Western Europe. And I would imagine that Australia is probably the worst, or maybe the west coast of the US, because in Western Europe, like, the servers just swell up with activity. And I do think there's a lot of different interest, in a couple different things. So some of these more niche games, like, really do swell in size, and then the East Coast of the U.S. benefits from that because they're able to hop on the servers as the Europeans are starting to go to bed. But then things kind of shift a little bit, and then the West Coast and then Australia, things like kind of peter off. So, like, I have noticed that a lot of times, because the games that I enjoy to play the most, typically I find and even the servers too. Like, I remember Alpin's Cold War server, like, in DCS, that server was only ever really populated during European time zone. So it's an interesting thing. So I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Mhm.
One thing, because we've been talking around it, but let me just ask you directly, and we don't need to go too deep into it, but two things. Okay, one, the team that you have is very small. Two, I think you said it already that, like, you're not really sure how many people want to play a game like this, and it's probably not a lot of people, right? But whatever that number is, the amount of people that are willing to make it is even smaller. And I would really love to hear you talk about this, because I have seen people's reactions to the game so far, and people have been quick to say like, "Oh, what about this or that?" or like, "Oh, I can't wait until they do this." But I just want to have you an opportunity to ground everyone, to tell everyone like what's the size of the team, and like remind everyone that you only have 24 hours in a day.
Oh, yeah, but you get only 24 hours in a day if you don't sleep. I mean, that's even worse than that. But yeah, I mean the team it's made. I mean everywhere. I mean I changed a little bit the marketing. I mean used to put myself in a team of four, but I actually to be honest, I'm just the guy paying the bills and writing the blah blah. I mean like a friend told me yesterday. I mean. They are. I mean, my whole job is writing the checks and writing the blah blah. I contribute by making the briefings, making the videos, stuff like that. I mean, talking to the publisher. This was my, and of course, there's game design, but there's the original kickoff to some extent. But then I have like the most important part of our team. It's Jean-Baptiste, of course. He's been writing like nearly every single line of code in this game. It's using his engine. I mean, we went for a house engine, and that's because very early on when I started looking scouting for talents. I came across his own I mean, it's been like I'm sorry, it's going to be a small parenthesis, but it's been like that for a lot of people involved in this project. You know, we go over there. I research what exists, and I go to see who makes what exists. And like in many situations, the persons I ended up meeting, talking to, and involving in this project, they just happen to be French, actually. And apart from Risky, our 3D artist that I hunt down on the internet, and I found him. I mean, he's really a diamond in the rough, in the way that actually he's not working in a studio. He was just a guy who liked to make boats. He just happens to make them very well. And since then, he's been helping a lot of other people making boats and planes too. And there was Julien, who is the 2D artist. You said we paint a lot. Well, he paints a lot, and he just happens to be also the guy making one cover out of 3 or 4 on the French Aviation Monthly, Le Fanat de l'Aviation, and he was just there on the message board, and I went and I talked to him. And then there was Jean-Baptiste, though. I mean, back to the developer, he made his own indie game, and when I saw the indie game he made with his friend Victor, that is now involved in the project too, I mean, I could feel that there was everything, all the tool set, all the toolkit for what I needed was there. I mean, it's the game is named Bomb. It's a Crimson Skies like game, but I mean, first levels take place in a Pacific kind of environment. I saw that he got the colors right. I saw that he got the tech right. I saw that he had what I needed. That is, I mean, I would say the most important innovation, I would say, and it's not really an innovation in the larger scale of thing because Gravity Team does it for land combat, but I wanted this to be built around a simulation engine. I mean, that's different from what people would usually do for a 3D war game, because at heart, it's a war game that emulates Carriers at War or the carrier combat in Pacific Air War, but it's built on a simulation engine. And by simulation engine, obviously, it's not DCS or it's not the EL2 engine either. I mean, but it means still the larger logic, the bigger logic is still the same. I mean, it's governed by laws that allows it to mimic reality, to mimic nature. And it was done this way because I felt like we could try to make a war game where the outcome would be based on a simulated environment. I mean, it's nothing like the Matrix, but still, I mean, a simulated environment is not just a matter of putting that counter in that place and rolling a dice. Obviously, there are dice being rolled all the time, but it would take us away from the original, the founding paradigm of classical war games, so that we could reach a larger audience. Because to be honest, I became a war gamer late in my life, because I used in the 90s I used to play microprose games, which were exactly made around that idea of having fun, but smart fun to some extent, intellectual fun, and most of these games, the 1940s series. I mean, as you can see, these engines, they are very close from each other. 1942, I mean, Task Force 1942, 1942, the Pacific Air War, or a game like maybe closer to where you live, it's Fleet Defender, or after that, even European Air War years later. You see that there is tech that is being passed from a version of the engine from the next one to the next one. And to me, very early on, when I started to realize that, because I was modding these games, I realized that, yeah, that means that you can have a common basis, and you can make them become whatever you want them to be. And this is the way we went for Task Force Admiral, because I knew that if we were going to have a limited, we wanted to keep the scope of the gameplay limited, but we don't want the engine in the car to be too limited. Otherwise, it will not take us where we want to go afterwards.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. So, it's kind of it's like loosely related, but I do want to talk about it before we run out of time. But you and I have talked a little bit on a couple different discords, or maybe on my Discord, but a trend that's happened. How do I want to say this? Like a trend where like a lot of not a lot, but some players have become really vocal about games, and the criticism toward developers has kind of like turned a little bit, where it's like much more it's much more aggressive than it is constructive. And it's a trend that you have also noticed too. And I know we've like traded messages talking about it, and we're like, oh, like, are you seeing this? Are you seeing that? And I haven't really talked about it too much on the channel, but I'm kind of curious. Like, now that you've released your first look into the game with a demo, um, and now that you kind of have mentioned how big the team is, because it is a quite small team, I'm just kind of curious of like where you go with this. Like how do you think like some of these more aggressive players, like what are they getting hung up on, or like what do you think they're not seeing? Like, I'm just kind of curious.
Well, it's not that they don't they are things they don't see. I think they are just things that are living rent free in their heads. Um, to be honest, I mean, real life has shown me that usually you don't bite the hand of the people who bring you nice things. I mean, if there's something you need, you feel like you need, the normal reaction would be to try to make friend with with the owner of the hand, not have a taste and start telling the guy. I mean, his hand sucks. Maybe he should have washed it better. I mean, next time bring a glove or something. I mean, uh, uh, I see people throwing tantrums online all the time. I mean, it's the democratization of internet. I mean, don't worry. I mean, I don't know when you got on internet first, but I mean, you're obviously we're pretty much the same age, right? I mean, late 30s, early
I
40s.
played the SSI games. I used to play Steel Panthers
Yeah.
3.
Okay, great. I mean, yeah, it's the age of steel pencils. Back then, I mean, we based our own appreciation of how the community was on on the idea we had of ourselves, and then you had the first shock with message boards when you. I mean, well, I wasn't doing much IRC back then, but when we were on Steam HQ and stuff like that, you would have the feeling, oh, a lot of people who are like-minded, and then I mean the whole scene went in a certain way, or maybe it's just the new generation, or it's just people being grumpier, because there are people our age or older than us that really hold a grudge. I mean, towards some of these people making these games they like, that puts them in a sort of emotional conundrum. I mean, they end up saying that they love the game, but they hate the people who make the games. I mean, I don't want to sound unpopular. And myself, again, I'm not saying that as a dev. I mean, until yesterday, until 2 days ago, I was a guy who would be called, I mean, who was making something that some people would call vaporware. I mean, okay, there was the self-playing demo from 2023, but point I get it. I mean, I had no legitimacy when it came to making games. So I'm not saying that as someone who believes that he's belonging to the cast of these game developers. No, I'm saying that as how do you say, as one of them of the customers. I mean, I just feel like it's not productive to go over there and start insulting the people making DCS, the people making EL2, the people making even War Thunder or GHPC or whatever. I mean, at some point in life, ask yourself. I mean, would you behave like that in real life? I feel a little guilty already spending so much time on games. At least I'm making them, so I'm trying to explain to people that yeah, at the end maybe I'm maybe making a bit of money. So I mean, it's not just a guilty pleasure. But the point is that I mean, if it was just about playing a game, I would be playing games, and then when I'm not happy with the game, I just shut the computer off and I go out there because the real life is out there and it's much worthier than the stuff we are doing. I mean, no offense, man, because we're talking on the internet, but anything that we're doing on the internet. I mean, family matters more. Pure friends you can talk to matter more, and to some extent, if you want to still keep buying computers and games, work matters more. Studies matter more. So yeah, I mean, sorry, it was my own kind of tantrum, but it's just that I don't understand some people, or more like I understand them to some extent. I can see where that comes from, but I don't think it's the smart thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think people forget about math. Not a lot of people play these games. Even less people want to build them. And
Mm.
then there's a lot of annoying people out there. I do. When you were talking, I found myself nodding a lot because not that I'm a game developer, but when I had my server, which is so ironic because the more time that has gone by since I've stopped doing it, the more I've realized what a huge time commitment it was, and honestly, I regret a lot of it. But one thing that's interesting to me is when I was doing it, some people were really quick. I don't know. I don't know the right way to say it, but like donate towards it, and I found myself actually going to people and giving the money back. I'm just like, it's not even worth it because like people, there's like that obligation, and then that makes it really tricky, and then it's just like it's a really hard thing. It was hard for me to wrap my head around it, and I would imagine as like an actual game developer making a game, that relationship is constant or very tricky. So I don't know. I know that we've talked about it on text back and forth, and I've always found it really interesting just how aggressive some of the players are because it's such like I don't know. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which like people are like so quick to like throw each other under the bus or whatever, and it's like people forget the reality that there's like so few people making these games that like we kind of have to help each other. So I find it an important piece to mention. But okay, so basically we are on February 20th, and I mentioned this
Mm-hmm.
because your game demo, excuse me, came out what 2 or 3 days ago. So you guys had the
Mm-hmm.
initial pledge goal of $19,000, and I'm looking at it now, and you're at $105,000, and you guys had stretch goals.
Probably. I mean, this on Kickstarter they convert currency. I mean, automatically, so it's a bit hard to tell you anything that isn't Australian dollars, to be honest.
Yeah, so
But yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's US dollars, I think. And then you have stretch goals, at 45,000 Australian dollars is going to be a 3D crew,
Yeah, yeah,
60,000 Australian dollars a soundtrack done by an orchestra, which by the way I actually really like the soundtrack a lot in the game. And then 75,000 Australian, which has already been reached. Also, you're going to expand from 1942 and into 1943, which is great. 90,000. There's going to be a flyable plane. 110,000 flyable or controllable anti-aircraft guns, which will be kind of fun. And animated crews, the next one, controllable ships. But the other last one, which is not reached yet. I don't think it's reached yet. Actually, it might actually be reached yet, assuming that the U.S. dollar amount was correct that I mentioned, which was the battle-based dynamic campaign. And this is I want to talk about this for a little bit because I think people were really a lot of people were really surprised to see that there was no campaign initially planned for the game. And my take on it was, I mean, I love campaigns. I live for them. But my take on the game was that like this game like the way I've been describing it in my head is like this is like a narrative real-time strategy game. Like and it's interesting you compared it to Regiment a little bit earlier because Regiment's is single player only, but the way that you're approaching it is kind of like from this very narrative point of view. You're giving it a lot of like I don't want to be like overly reductive, but like there's like the illustrations, the cartoons that come with it, or the comics, I should say. Like you're really trying to build like a feeling to bring people back to kind of build a story or a narrative. And it's like a much more curated experience. But like with this dynamic campaign, that it looks like it could have already been reached. It's just the currency conversion is a little bit tricky, but
No. I just put it online yesterday, and there's still like 45,000 AUD Australian dollars yet to go. I mean,
okay, so that's like $5 American. So we'll get there. So
probably, but, let's not jinx it.
But I'm curious, like, well, I guess my question is, what is my question? My question, I guess, is, you know, when you were thinking about the game, I'm sure you were very French and measured and being like, okay, like I'm sure we can maybe do this, but maybe not that, and it'll be somewhere in the middle. But now it seems like you guys are just kind of crushing the initial goal. So I'm just kind of curious, like how it, you know, if you were to reach this goal for the dynamic campaign, like how, I guess, how excited are you, and kind of where does your mind go?
Well, you know, maybe one of the reasons why you don't get that kind of games being made in America anymore is that in the kind of economy America has, um, I mean, it's not interesting anymore to, or I mean, it's not. I mean, you would need a certain set of circumstances to be allowed to do that kind of games, like like we do it. And these, I think, don't really exist in America anymore, or they don't exist to the extent that people would be willing to bank their ideas in that fashion. And obviously, I mean, there's a big thing that doesn't exist anymore is publishers like old micro pros in America who would cater to that kind of niche. I mean, if you take a look at the situation, I would say that the company, the American company that is the closer to that kind of legacy would be Hooded Horse, but the boss of Hooded Horse, I mean, he's a guy who put all his he put his own money at stake to start the whole thing. If you like at the all, you look at the other labels, you get okay, a business you put your own money. But what I mean, from what I understand, it started as a hobby because he had another kind of job. I think he's a lawyer or something. But he decided I want to do that because nobody does it, and it's not because it's going to be good business necessarily, but because he needs it. And if you look at all the labels, like Slytherin, that is actually British based, or the new micropros that is Australian based, hence the Australian dollars. I mean, we have that kind of ecosystem for making games everywhere outside of America that makes it weird that actually, I mean, let it. You were talking about time zones, all that, but in our case, I mean, make no mistake, like 50 to 60% of the people who are going to buy this game statistically speaking, and I base that off older experience because Kickstarter hasn't given us the geographic data yet. But I mean, more than 50% of the people buying this game, they're going to be Americans. They want that stuff. There's just nobody to give it to them because either you AAA and you're making Battlefield, Call of Duty, or whatever, and or you're an indie, and then like for people like us making that game, it took like 5 or 6 years. But we are in France and in Indonesia, we really have like zero. It's totally incomparable in terms of comfort making that kind of game when you know that we still enjoy social security. I mean, it will sound a bit socialist, and sorry in advance, but I mean, the point is that I mean, my dev or my illustrator, they can give me all the time they can in this 24 hours a day, because they don't have to worry if tomorrow, if when they're gonna get sick, they're gonna have support from the state or anything, because they will have it. They don't have to care about that kind of stuff, so they can actually focus on that kind of stuff. And in America, if you don't have a corporation providing that for you, and you're not starting with a big bag of money, then it's going to be asking a lot from an indie developer to try his luck doing something like ours, because you cannot guarantee first that you're going to make a good game. Secondly, even if you make a good game, there are a lot of good games out there. They don't find their audience, and I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty relieved that we did. To go back to the original question, we were careful, which is might not sound too French, but actually Furia Frances, it's a very controlled thing. I mean, it's like it's made with patience, but there's a plan, and this plan, it was possible because, in my opinion, because of the environment. I mean, if we had been in America, we'd be dead. I mean, say things clearly. I mean, and I'm not sure that anybody you vote for is going to change anything to that. I mean, we're going to be dead because within 5 years we didn't make $1. Obviously, fortunately, we benefited from Microprose financial support, and it was very substantial. But our mind was at ease all the way, because we knew that there would be money the next month, and then we could take our time to do something nice, to do something like the way we wanted to make something the way we wanted to make it. And it is not the kind of luxury you can enjoy at this scale in America in 2025. But that's my feeling for exchanging with my fellow American indie developers.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I mean, I don't really have much to say on that. I mean, I agree with you. It's just the reality of math, and it's just how the world is. But what is, or not the world, but how the U.S. is. But I guess what is interesting though is that let's make this on a high note. I guess the other thing too though is that people need each other. And like you were saying, you're expecting that half or maybe slightly over half of the purchases are going to be from the U.S. So while the safety net wasn't there in the U.S. to allow for something like this to develop, to initially start it will help it to bring it to the finish line, I guess, or with the purchases. So I guess the cooperation in the end kind of really pulls through. So I think that's
The whole game is about America, Enigma. I mean, obviously, I mean, it wouldn't even. I mean, the whole corporation, it starts with the fact that there would be no American history. There would be no game to begin with. I mean, it's yeah, it's as you say, it's a love letter not just to the PTO but to the U.S. Navy too.
Yeah. All right, Toad. What's the final thing you want people to think about before we close out?
Oh, geez, it's going fast. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's been over an hour.
Yeah, I talk a lot. I'm sorry about that. You're gonna have to cut a lot of that stuff so that people are not going to complain in the comments. Well, we still have a lot of. I mean, we still have ideas for for the future. I mean, I just want to make it clear that if we were to reach the next goal, then the goal after that one is still going to be what I call a reasonable goal. I mean, we're not here selling, I don't know what is the expression in English, but maybe you're selling unicorns or whatever. I mean, we're not going suddenly to say, yeah, and from. I mean, I'm sorry for people who are waiting for Japan, but Japan is too much, too big of a nut to crack in a stretch goal. And this is a question we probably we have more than the campaign part, because the campaign part is about people who like the topic but are frustrated by the gameplay option. But I have a lot of people. I have some people out there who are not happy because they want to play Japanese. And it's not that I don't want to play Japanese, but and maybe the demo has made it more apparent right now. Is that if we need to make it for the for the Japanese Navy, and it's I'm not saying it needs to be a new game, but the amount of work we're gonna put in there to pay the same kind of tribute to the to Japanese couriers, and a lot of people are paying attention to that. It's going to be huge. I mean, there's a lot of research involved. There's a lot of translation work involved. Fortunately, in 2025, when we're going to tackle that after that, I mean, thanks to AI, a lot of things are going to be made easier. But just maybe as a word of conclusion for those people who are disappointed about not playing Japanese, I mean, we have a very good relationship with our Japanese player base, from what I understand, and our Chinese player base too. I mean, because I mean this is and this is what I said. Our German player base. I mean, when I say 50% of everybody will be American, that's a given. But then after that, I mean, the second most important player community in terms of numbers, that's the Chinese community, because maybe you heard about this whole little red book thing and all that. I mean, just like you discover, both sides are discovering that people are normal, but actually, I mean, it's more of an American thing to discover that the Chinese people are normal. Chinese people, they had that kind of interest in American history for ages, and they are really very much into the game, and they are a lovely community too. And the Germans, obviously, they're very into simulation stuff, and they are the third community. I mean, this is country you bombed into oblivion, for Christ's sake, and they are like they are super interested in a topic that involves America on the other side of the world 70 years ago. So I mean, one never should underestimate the power of soft power, but at the same time, the reason why we connect with our American and all these our American players and all these people all around the world is that we are all together gathered together a common idea that if we're going to do that well. If we are going to do that, we gotta do that well. We're gonna do that respectfully. We're gonna do that clean. We're gonna do that with research, and this is the same logic when it comes to the Japanese Navy and the Japanese players. We know they understand the fact that we're not going to do the Japanese first, or at least we're not going to make it so that we do the Japanese at the same time as the Americans, because they want their own models. They want to have Japanese carriers being simulated properly, not just simplified. They want tactics to be as authentic as possible. And that's the same stuff as what Jason is saying for Combat Pilot. I mean, if you want to do stuff about the Japanese, you need to do it well, and that's one of the reasons why IL-2 never got there in the past years. So I mean, again, last word. I understand the frustration, but I mean, as long as the Japanese players understand that we mean well and that they are willing to wait, we're not going to change our position on that. And thanks to, but again, I mean, people are, and this is what I was writing yesterday in the general discussion forum when I had people criticize. I had one guy criticizing the lack of fun because all the bombs were missing or anything. This game is not made for everybody, and by that I do not mean I'm snob or that people who like that game are better people than the people who don't like that game. At some point, this game was made to be played by a niche. I mean, I understand people mean well when they say that we should open the scope because more people would be playing and all that. It's fine, but I mean, it's like everything else. You don't want to lose yourself. You don't want to, yeah, to change your soul just because you would have more people playing it. I mean, from what we see on Kickstarter, we have enough people playing it so that we can make the next one. So I wouldn't be too worried about that, first of all. And second of all, if you do not connect with the game, it's okay. I mean, as you see in the stretch goals, we're gonna add more and more gameplay dimensions. Maybe you don't like it when you cannot give orders to the planes, but I mean, eventually you're gonna be able to fly a plane, or you're gonna be able to grab a gun, and maybe then it will be the kind of game you wanted, and maybe not. But even then, it's fine. And I think that our approach, and I'm very happy about that, is that we let people play the game without asking a dime from them, and at the end of the day, even if you only had a little bit of fun and you find it boring, I'm happy that you didn't have to spend money on it. And let's be friends. I mean, no reason to not no reason not to be friends. That's gonna be my last sentence.
I like it. Yeah, I had a whole plan for things to talk about, and we went a little bit off the rails, but
Oh, sorry about that.
it's okay. I'm not complaining. We went somewhere. We said some stuff. Some people will be happy. Some people will be upset. But I think the point here is that you have a point of view, and it may not be for everyone, but that's okay because we're all we're all in this niche. Actually, hold on. Quick question. Sorry, this is the last
Yeah.
question.
No, please.
My girlfriend's getting
No
hungry. She
problem.
just looked at me. But I have a quick question.
Yeah,
You've actually been
please.
watching the channel for a bit. I'm just kind of curious. What are your thoughts? I like to ask this selfish question at the very end. Any thoughts on this YouTube channel?
No, I like.
What have you been liking? What have you not been liking?
Yeah, I mean, it's not because I do not agree with people. I'm not the kind of people who would criticize uh, or other games or stuff like that. It's that I do not enjoy some drama from time to time. I mean, I'm following with interest. So this first thing, I mean, I'm interested by any kind of. It's not necessarily polemic. I mean, I don't know how you call that. I mean, it's like sometimes you ask questions that need to be asked so that we can have opinions and formulated in a manner that is not a tweet or a post on a forum. So that's one thing I appreciate. Second thing I appreciate is that I mean, when you give voice to all the modders, it's always very interesting to listen to the personal, trajectories where these people come from, why they're making what they make, and why they decided to dedicate so much in fact, such a big part of their life making it, and my own personal experience in my job and everything is that at the end of the day, only people matter. I mean, I love our game, but it's just a game, and it's not in 2025. I can't even say it's a game in a box. I mean, we're gonna make a box, but the game is not in the box. It's a license you are buying, if not borrowing from Steam. And at the end of the day, we're people, and we are people with feelings, we're people with adventures, with projects, with dreams, with disappointments, and that's the romantic part of my French culture is that I want to know the personal stories, and you are one of the few ones out there who actually delivers them.
All right, Toad. I think you said it all. I want to thank you for the game. Thank you for your passion and your support. Also, thank you for doing the Pacific. I feel like it's been ignored for a long time, and I definitely feel the love with the game. And also, thank you for making a demo. I haven't seen someone make an actual demo in a long time. I know some people disagree with me, but like buying a game on Steam and returning it before 2 hours that's not actually a demo.
It breeds frustration. Yeah, there's
this was an actual real demo, and I got a taste. And I the last thing I will say is that moment when that little mission success screen came up before I sank all the carriers, but because I damaged them, that killed me. I was like, damn it, I want to play more, but it's a demo. I can't. So now I have to buy the damn thing. So I'm waiting for the full release. So I'm excited. Really excited to see how the cartoons come out, or the comics come out in the game. I'm actually, because they look really good. And I wish you well. Bon courage. And that's it.
Merci beaucoup, and big thanks for your support, and big thanks to your community. Obviously, I mean, we wouldn't be. Feeling validated is really priceless, and in our project, and we're sure moral is super high. We're gonna get there. Thank you, and thank you all for your support, because it means everything.
All right, thank you.